Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me, as always, on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills guys, presented by the Cover One Sports Network. And as Chris says, gotta love the dub. It is a post-win game reaction show. The Bills defeated the Carolina Panthers 31-14. And we're obviously going to talk a ton about that tonight. But I feel like, honestly, the number one thing that we got to lead off with is there were two games today. Obviously, not this crap that we have to watch right now between Minnesota and Chicago, two of the most boring teams in football. But there was some crap on before that too, where the Cleveland Browns practice squad took the Las Vegas Raiders to the wire, and Zay Jones might have had his best game as a Buffalo Bill tonight. What are your thoughts on that? keeping the Bills out of the hunt.
Yeah, Zay Jones leading the way for the Raiders in receiving yards, and man, a game that actually had some implications for the Bills tonight, as you mentioned. The Browns and the Raiders sitting there, just kind of teetering on the edge of being eliminated. The Browns obviously with the same record as the Bills going into that. So or one game behind, or half game behind, I should say. But the Browns losing obviously makes it a little bit easier for the Bills as far as their path. And Spin comes in and says it. It's about time Zay Jones did something for the Bills, and he really did help out the Bills tonight. Raiders get that win on the last final field goal from Daniel Carlson. And Chris S says, I thought Mullins was actually going to win for a minute.
I'm going to be straight up with you, though. Nick Mullins, for some odd reason, wasn't really sought after this offseason. And he was on the Browns practice squad. He's on my backup QB watch for next year. He's not a bad quarterback where if you need him to start a game, I mean, he can come in there and he can not puke all over himself. So,
I think, wasn't he on our list this past year too?
Yeah,
I feel like
he had a shoulder injury or something that I think scared off a lot of teams. He was with the Eagles for a little bit, then he bounced onto the Browns practice squad. So, his arm is not great. it's not pretty. But if you look at some of the quarterbacks out there, I actually started my 2020 offseason research this week, and I think the two names I had circled as a possible backup quarterback were Colt McCoy and Joe Flacco. So, that's about what you're going to get in terms of a veteran Matt Barkley. But hey, that's a long way away. Thank you to Zay Jones. We are not in the hunt. We are still securely in the 8th seed, and we control our own destiny. We beat the Patriots. We beat the Falcons. We beat the Jets. We are the AFC East champions for the second year in a row. So the Buffalo Bills officially control their own destiny. Obviously, we're going to talk about New England in the pregame, maybe talk a little bit about them at the end of the show today, but they lost on Saturday night.
Yep.
Got a little taste of their own medicine in a dome, mind you. In a dome, they lost to a football team that completed 5 passes. I didn't see a lot of reporters and a lot of national media people really harping on the New England Patriots or saying it was embarrassing that they lost when a team only completed 5 passes on them. Did that surprise you that the people weren't holding the Patriots to the same standard as they were the Buffalo Bills?
But they never do. We know this is the case. We know over the last 20 years that the likes of ESPN and whoever, they hold the Patriots in a different esteem than they do every other team. And regardless that Tom Brady is not there anymore, they still have Belichick, and they still have that sort of, a little bit of entitlement around the treatment that they get from the national types. It's always one of the things that drives me nuts most about them, not to get too sidetracked here, is how lauded he always, Belichick always gets for his drafts, when in reality, his drafts really haven't been that good over the last 10 plus years. And oh, that's a Patriots pick, or that's a this and that. It's no, it's not. So I am surprised, but I'll tell you what I was even more surprised by was Bill Belichick actually apologizing to the media.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I had no idea what he was apologizing for. Was he just a grumpy asshole in his post game?
Yes. Well, he didn't. I will say this to his credit. He's been consistently like that for the better part of 2 decades. So, I didn't expect him to come out and apologize because what he did on his post game Saturday night was the status quo for him. So, yeah. I don't know. Maybe he got a little early Christmas present from somebody. I don't know.
It's just super weird, and I'm getting sick and tired of it. Like, we'll get to our jabroni of the week at the end of the show, and I got a special jabroni of the week for some specific members of the national media. But like, there were people on Twitter, like national people, like, man, Mac Jones leading a comeback in the fourth quarter. Like, he played like crap the first three quarters. And, he let his team down and scored a touchdown late. And everyone wants to pat Mac Jones on the back. But what were they doing with Josh Allen? They were shitting all over Josh Allen's first half against the Buccaneers and ignoring his second half. I
Right.
mean, make up your mind, people. Like, it's just so clear as day. Some of the biases that you see, it's absolutely incredible. And I mean, speaking of biases, Tom Brady, man, shut out against the New Orleans Saints. That was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Breaking the tablet as an educator, that pissed me off. I think that I put this on Twitter. I think for every tablet an NFL player breaks, like an entire little baby, they should have to donate 1,000 tablets to school children who could use shit like that. Tom Brady, fuck you for breaking that tablet. First of all, like, as someone who understands the importance of technology, especially in the hands of people's youth, to see him so fucking reckless with a piece of technology like that, like it's a fucking toy, pissed me off. And then you see towards the end of that game too, where he walked over to the New Orleans Saints sideline and like told the coach to go fuck himself. Like, oh, that's not taunting. Like, Cassius Marsh would be sitting in a prison cell right now if he had done that. Absolutely ridiculous that the fact that man plays by a different set of rules. Absolutely incredible.
He does. And you know what? For the entire Bucks organization, they're riding that tidal wave too of playing by the different set of rules, especially with what we saw 2 weeks ago with the game against the Bills, obviously with the officiating. We won't go back into that too much. Jason Taylor says Brady lost both his starting receivers
Oh
and
my
running back.
gosh. We lost our entire offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're not gonna. This is not a Brady sympathy hour. So, look, I mean, whatever. You're not gonna get me feeling. I have like, as a franchise and as an organization, I really don't care about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, and I never
Mhm.
have. Like, obviously, we care about them a little bit more now because Brady's there, and we're kind of keeping an eye on that. And they could be the team that ends up being, in the Bills' way come Super Bowl time if they can make that far. But for my entire life, really, the Tampa Bay organization hasn't meant
Mhm.
anything to me. But you're seeing now what a difference one guy can make to the aura and how that team gets kind of viewed, especially from the officiating standpoint, from national media standpoint. Like, I mean, Tampa Bay was kind of like a meh organization until
Mhm.
Tom Brady went there, right?
Yeah,
Since Tony
I mean,
Dungy and John Gruden era.
people act so surprised that Tom Brady is playing into his mid 40s. I'm not surprised at all because he gets to play two-hand touch while everyone else has to play tackle. I mean, like, the dude never gets touched. His offensive line gets to play by a different set of rules when it comes to holding and all that different stuff. So I digress. It's time to get into Bills Panthers talk because that's what we are here for. And you know what? We need time to give us a little pat on the back. I actually got this message from Terry Pagula about some of our pregame predictions. And I want to start off our first segment talking about some of the things that we mentioned pregame and how that came to fruition in the game on Sunday afternoon. And this was the text I got from Terry.
Terry just texted me to smile.
Terry texted us a smile because there were a couple of things that we said in the pregame show that actually came to fruition for the Buffalo Bills. You were talking about how you thought Gabriel Davis was either going to get 100 receiving yards or 2 receiving touchdowns. What does he do? He ends up with 85 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns on the day. I said that F.A. Obata is going to make 1 or 2 really splash plays that were going to stick out. And sure enough, he gets 2 sacks on the game in his revenge game against the Carolina Panthers. And we both talked about how Devin Singletary, we expected him to be the workhorse in this game and get a majority of the carries. And sure enough, he ended up with the game with 20 plus carries. So that came to fruition as well. So a lot of the things that we talked about on the pregame show were actually came to fruition on game day. Also, Anthony Prohaska, I believe, predicted a Jeremy Chin turnover, which we're not going to talk about that one.
Yeah, and Anthony did predict 100 yards for Singletary, and I mean, look,
for
to
short.
his credit, 86 yards. I mean, pretty
he had 10
close, right?
receiving yards too, so almost
10
100 all
receiving
purpose.
yards, so almost 100 all purpose. And for a Bills running back, I mean, that's as good as I'll count that as a win for him because that was damn close.
All right, so Let's start off today with things that we liked, and people in the comments section, let us know what are some things that you liked about this football game. I'm going to start, and then Dave, I'll let you maybe mention one or two. And we'll just go down the list of things that we liked about this football game. Number one, I mean, the number one thing that I liked was I thought Josh Allen had an absolutely perfectly adequate game for the way his offensive line performed in front of him. 19 to 34, 210 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. He had that big 20+ yard rush. That throw to Gabriel Davis on the first touchdown. I mean, my goodness. I thought that Josh Allen is something that there was one thing that Josh Allen did in this game that when we get to the next segment, I'll talk about, but I thought Josh Allen had a perfectly adequate game for the way that his offensive line played in front of him.
Yeah, it was looking iffy there early, right? I mean, the Bills punt on their first 2 possessions. They have a combined -3 total yards on those first 2 possessions with and then they come out and they get that nice 6-play touchdown drive on their 3rd possession. But you could tell early in the game with a couple of those balls that sailed a little bit on Josh, the one of the side, 2 of them to Beasley, one to the sideline and one over the middle. You could tell he was a little bit, unsure of that protection up front, I'll say. And that's really, I think, what it came down to early in the game. And then as things kind of settled in, the Bills started running the ball a little bit. I wouldn't say they ran the ball super effectively. Honestly, they didn't, but it eased up a little bit on what he was able to do. And he played, like you said, a perfectly good game with the line he had in front of him. We said that was the major concern going into the game was, could the Bills utilize the quick passing attack? Could they figure out a way to neutralize not only the Panthers' strength, which is that those edge guys in Burns and Reddick, but also our deficiencies on the offensive line. So, for all of those things considered, Brian Burns still had himself a pretty good game. Josh did everything he could with what he had in front of him and a really good game.
Yeah, James Emming comes in, said he really liked the last drive. We ran the same formation and used that play to set up that 4th touchdown pass, which was the 2nd time in the game Stephon Gilmore was burned for a touchdown. By the way, I like that. Randy Harbin comes in and says, I like Boogie and Obata. Both of these guys are guys I want to talk about. I think both of them deserve to get onto the football field. We talk about the best players playing. Obviously, AJ Epinesa was out because of an ankle injury, and now he might be out again because he tested positive for COVID today. So he's now on the COVID reserve list. Injury or not, it might be time to put AJ Epinesa on the pine and make sure that Boogie Basham gets out on the field and get F.A. Obata the requisite reps, not just at defensive tackle at the 3 tech, but he was looking good on the edge as well.
And this to me is really important because if you're the Bills and you're looking at this roster going down the stretch and you're looking at this roster even beyond 2021, if F.A. Obata can prove himself, just like you mentioned it, I think on Twitter or maybe in a chat about Harrison Phillips playing his way into another contract. Like he's a guy that could play his way into into a contract for the Bills in 2022 with Mario Addison, Jerry Hughes likely not back in the mix for next year. The Bills are going to need someone to kind of round out that edge room with Basham, with Rousseau, right? These young guys. And at this point, it's very hard to kind of predict what AJ Epinesa is going to be for this team. We had high hopes for him going into this season. It's been a bit of an up and down years, kind of started out hot and then now what? So F.A. Obata bringing that presence in this game, maybe that gives the Bills like a thought to maybe 2022 and beyond with him at this point. So that was really nice to see, and it is concerning, I think, at this point. It is fair to say it's concerning what to make out of AJ Epinesa, right? I mean, I know we talked about he had, basically a lost season last year with the weight thing, and this year it's been up and down. But like, I mean, at what point do we start saying like he's not really going to be more than a rotational guy or even like a big part of the plans for this
Right now, he's not even a rotational guy because he's even invisible in a rotation. Yeah, it's Drip Bayless coming in and says he thought the defense was super aggressive. I agree. Levi Wallace's aggressiveness was something that really stood out to me. Teron Johnson was super aggressive at the line of scrimmage. He piled himself up a nice little sack. Under the radar was Harrison Phillips. I can't remember which sack it was, but I do remember it looked like Cam Newton was going to escape the sack, and then Harrison Phillips beat his man, saved the sack.
Yep.
You mentioned before, he's playing his way into a second contract. I was super mad at myself because I said I was talking about revenge game in the pregame show, and I mentioned Mario Addison. I mentioned Vernon Butler, who I thought had a sack, but I look back and look at the box score. He didn't get credit for the sack. Good. Fuck him. I don't want him to get credit for the sack. He had one good play all goddamn game. But solid interception by former Carolina Panther AJ Klein. I forgot about AJ Klein's revenge game. He came out in garbage.
What about
time.
F.A. Obata revenge game?
Yeah, well, that was so it was Addison, it was Butler, it was Obata that I mentioned. It wasn't AJ Klein that I mentioned. So kudos to him for getting that revenge game interception. And then obviously Harrison Phillips.
I mean, it
Jerron
was an
Johnson,
early
Levi
Christmas
Wallace
gift
as
for AJ Klein. Let's not make too much of that. That was like
Cam was feeling generous, but yeah, James Emming comes in and says Dane Jackson was holding his own as well. So I thought the defense had a really solid performance. I thought it could have been better. Like if they were allowed to kick, if they could have kicked field goals, like that's a Carolina Panthers team that could have put up like 20 plus points, which I think as far as our defense is concerned, like that's unacceptable with a team with a quarterback and a play caller, et cetera, like that. But the offense did put them in a bad spot on that one turnover. But I mean, they were just grinding us down with Cam Newton, and that's tough for anyone to stop, really. And they were working the ball down the field. I was a little disappointed that it took us as long as it did to get a turnover as poorly as they were playing. That team was just absolutely looking to turn the football over. But any other things that you liked? Obviously, we've covered most of the defense now at this point. We talked about Josh Allen. There's some other obvious ones, mostly on offense. Anything else that you liked?
Yeah, Gabriel Davis, obviously. I mean, he's really come into the mix heavily the last few weeks, and I think that it's no coincidence that when he's involved in the game plan, the offense seems to be finding a different type of rhythm. You saw that early in the year with Emmanuel Sanders. Remember how hot he started with all those touchdowns and kind of his involvement. I think the main point here is that role in the offense is really important, right? It's really important that someone opposite of Stephon Diggs on the outside can do damage, right? And can make teams pay. And so we know Knox and Beasley have done their work over the middle, and we know Stephon Diggs, gets his workman-like sort of box score every game. It always seems like he does, and that touchdown was pretty awesome too on Gilmore. So throw that out there too. But having that guy on the other side of Diggs on the outside, whether it was Sanders or Davis, I really like what Davis has brought to the table. That size he brings is something that is a unique and important factor, I think, for the Bills down the stretch. Like, he is the one guy that has that size in this receiving group that plays regularly. I'm not talking about guys like Kumaro like that. I'm talking about a guy that plays regularly with that size, and he has done damage, and he is a touchdown maker. And I really was impressed with his game as well. And so very happy with what we've seen out of Davis the last couple of weeks.
5 catches, 85 yards, 17 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. You talk about him being a touchdown maker. This is a statistic from Kyle Yates, who's a fantasy football guy on Twitter. Davis has 1 less career touchdown than DJ Moore. DJ Moore has played in 60 games and has 286 career receptions. Gabriel Davis, half the amount of games, 30 games and 60 career receptions. The dude is literally a touchdown maker. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about just common sense things that this offense can do to be better. And one of them was make Gabriel Davis your number 2 receiver. And the Buffalo Bills were forced. Their hand was forced this week to make Gabriel Davis their number 2 receiver. And we saw the benefits of it. And I think when Emmanuel Sanders comes back, Emmanuel Sanders should not be the number 2 wide receiver. He should be a guy who's splitting reps with Cole Beasley in the slot, because those are 2 older players, 2 guys who maybe be able to use the rest. And you also have him to flank out into Stephon Diggs' spot. You can give Dave Davis a breather, etc. But Gabriel Davis should be used as your number 2 receiver. It shouldn't be some kind of rotation or, anything like that. It should be Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs on the outside a majority of the time. So I was super pumped about that. And I wanted to get into not just Gabriel Davis, but I mean, Stephon Diggs. So his stat line was 4 catches, 35 yards, a touchdown. He took Gilmore to task on his touchdown. I mean, it was beautiful. Josh Allen audibled He called that play. He saw the single coverage between Gilmore and Diggs, and he threw a nice little ball. And that's I posted this on Twitter. That's what you love to see as a Bills fan. Your alpha quarterback and your alpha wide receiver doing alpha things. And that's what they did on that touchdown pass. They were just absolute alphas. And you love to see that. Stephon Diggs has right now 82 catches on the season for over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns with still 3 games to play. On this show included, we're guilty of this. There's been a lot of we need to feed Diggs chatter. And I think that sort of that worry or that concern about feeding Diggs, I think that needs to cool down a little bit because number one, I think Josh Allen looks more comfortable when he's not trying to force the ball to anyone. He's just sort of spreading it out. Number two, it doesn't seem like Stephon Diggs is bothered by some of these stat lines where he's got 4 for 35, etc. And I think when we this offseason address the offensive line and fix the offensive line, this offense will be able to hum more and do better things when there's better protection in front of Josh Allen. And those statistics will go up without anything else changing but the offensive line, not the play calling, not the number of times he's targeted, etc. Those targets that he's currently getting on the pace he's getting this year will turn into better production if the offensive line in front of Josh Allen just plays better because the offense will click more. So I think we just need to, a lot of people are guilty of this, us included. I said, I think we just need to relax on the feed Diggs chatter. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, he's still top 10 in the NFL in targets. So it's like, he's not lacking targets. He has 128 targets on the year, which again, that puts him right squarely in the top 10. We have to remember that, and again, he had 166 targets last year, right? So the Bills have 3 games left. If you figure he averages 7 to 8 targets a game the rest of the way, put him at 20 more targets. He's at 148, close to 150 targets on the year versus 166 last year, where he led the NFL in receptions and yards with 127, 1535. So he's not going to have the same number of receptions that he did last year, which was just a phenomenal year, but he's still very likely to come close and potentially get that 100-yard season. I mean, basically has to average 6.5, 7 catches a game the rest of the way. It's not impossible, but we need to kind of take a step back and I think put it into context of how special last season was and how starved the Bills were for a receiver like that, for him to come like all the way and just like take us to the point where we had really like no alpha, no number one receiver. We're talking about guys like Zay Jones and Kelvin Benjamin, to a guy that leads the NFL in receptions and receiving yards. And yes, he's leveled off a bit this year, but he's still having a number one receiver type season, 82 catches over 1,000 yards already with 8 touchdowns. Like you said, the 8 touchdowns, that matches what he had last year. He only had 8 touchdowns. And they showed the graphic on the Fox broadcast about how him and Stevie Johnson are the only 2 guys to have back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons for the Bills in 20 whatever years. And when Stevie Johnson was doing that, we were thrilled for the dude to just get 1,000 yards and have like his 80 catches. So now we're talking about like 80 catches and 1,000 yards being like the floor, if not something.
And he's still got three games to build on that. So
exactly,
I mean, he's going to get he's probably going to get into 1,300 yards. He's probably going to get double-digit touchdowns, and he's probably going to push the 100 reception mark. Not sure if he'll quite get there, but I mean, just impressive stuff. And Devin E comes in and says Diggs gets the team fired up after that touchdown to Stephon Gilmore. Like Stephon Diggs is a mood on the sideline, man. He is an absolute mood. Like I love watching that dude on the sideline, the way he interacts with his teammates, and all that good stuff. Like he is literally the consummate teammate, and what an absolute get that was for the Buffalo Bills to add him to this football team, to add him for Josh Allen, to add him to this locker room, to add him to the sideline. Like just the way he goes about his business. I have no idea what the issue was in Minnesota and how they couldn't figure that out. But I mean, kudos to them. They got Justin Jefferson. Everybody's happy. Justin Jefferson just got a touchdown pass. It's not like Minnesota won the trade, Jerry fucking Sullivan. Fuck you.
To answer Justin's question here, he does not lead the league in targets. Cooper Kupp leads the league in targets, but you're talking about Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Deontay Johnson, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. Those are the only players with more targets on the season.
DJ Moore has more targets than Stephon Diggs.
Yep, 133 targets for DJ
How many
Moore.
catches does DJ Moore? What's DJ Moore's stat line this year? Does it have it up there?
It's actually quite similar to Stephon Diggs outside of
Okay.
touchdowns. He has 78 catches for 986 yards, only 4 touchdowns. So it's kind of an eerily similar from a receptions and yard standpoint, but half as many touchdowns.
Yeah. The last receiver I want to touch on before I obviously touch, we'll close it out on Devin Singletary in the running game. Dawson Knox only had 4 catches for 38 yards, but you know what I was really impressed by with Dawson Knox? They weren't like catches of opportunities, like a broken play turned into something or a yards after catch. There were a couple of plays where it was Josh Allen looking Dawson Knox's way on key plays, like looking for that mismatch that he and the Buffalo Bills clearly thought they had with Jeremy Chin, and force feeding Dawson Knox the ball, and Dawson Knox making some difficult catches and picking up some first downs. So that is sort of another step up in Dawson Knox's game, where it's not just him making a big play here or there. It's Josh Allen looking for him in big moments, force feeding him a ball, and him going out there and picking up those first downs. So that was a huge, I think, growth moment for Dawson Knox as he continues to progress into this tight end one that we're seeing him become.
I mean, he really is. And of course, there was a big almost play where Tommy Sweeney had the drop, and you're like, man, wish we had Dawson Knox.
I thought that was Dawson Knox, and I was like, you mother. I thought that was Dawson Knox, and then I saw it was Tommy Sweeney. I'm like, this makes sense. This absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
But we're gonna talk about that in the things we didn't like in a second. But to close out the things that we liked, Devin Singletary, 22 carries, 86 yards. That's only 3.9 yards per carry. A touchdown. He had 1 catch for 10 yards, so he almost had 100 all-purpose yards. Here's the thing. Like, it wasn't the greatest day in the world, but it was exactly what the Buffalo Bills needed, some stability on the ground. We have been asking on this show, pick one running back and stick with them. Let them find a rhythm. Let them find some consistency. I truly believe, and you could tell me if you think I'm wrong here, I truly believe that if the Buffalo Bills were rotating between Devin Singletary and Matt Breida, that the two of them combined don't push that 86 yards, maybe don't score that touchdown, and the running game didn't look as adequate as it does if they were splitting those carries between two backs.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. There is truth into getting into a rhythm, kind of feeling how your line's blocking, understanding sort of what cuts you're going to make almost before you get to the line of scrimmage. And the fact that, look, it doesn't look pretty at the end, 3.9, but we know the Panthers have one of the better defenses in the league, number 2 defense coming into that game. They were without Derek Brown, but the Bills were also banged up on their front. So the fact is he gave them stability, like you said. And look, I'm not sitting here telling you that Devin Singletary is this like awesome running back that's gonna, he's like gonna turn into like Najee Harris or Christian McCaffrey or someone like that, or Alvin Kamara if he gets 20 carries a game, because he's not. But he can bring you stability at least to that position in a game where you need to kind of grind out some yards. Like the Bills, I think sometimes feel like they have to throw in situations maybe when they don't even need to, because it's still their best bet on picking up yards and potentially sealing games, which it kind of sucks when you have to think about it that way. But really, Zach Moss was inactive, hasn't given, like, he had very short window of splashes in the middle of the season, but consistency hasn't been there. And Drip says here, those were hard-earned yards, and Singletary had very hard yards.
He showed his vision and contact balance that were the things that got him drafted in the 3rd round. You saw that shiftiness. You saw that ability to wiggle out of traffic and pick up extra yards in a phone booth. And you saw the ability to keep the leg drive going and to pick up some of those extra yards when you thought he was down. A lot of the things that got Devin Singletary drafted, a lot of the things that got us really excited about Devin Singletary in his rookie season were on full display yesterday.
They were, and I think you can get glimpses into what this Bills offense could be ceiling-wise if they had some good blocking and even like a little bit more juice at that running back position. I think you look around at teams that maybe don't run the ball that much either, right? But teams like Kansas City with Clyde and Darrell Williams, teams like the Packers with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, like, Aaron Jones isn't getting the ball 20 times a game, but he's still a dynamic running back, and the Packers know how to use him, and they have that complement with A.J. Dillon. the Chiefs have that with Clyde and Darrell Williams, and you look at other teams that are really quarterback, heavy and quarterback dependent. Dallas with Zeke and Tony Pollard, like few examples like that. If the Bills get the offensive line right, then that investment in the running back position may come, right? I'm not going to say it's going to be a first round pick or like a big top dollar guy, but like you may see them, spend a little bit more on that position if they can figure out this offensive line.
Yeah, Justin P comes in and says, how will we ever know when he never gets touches, that him being Devin Singletary? How many times has he got to prove himself with limited carries? Singletary is a beast. Imagine if he had an average offensive line, Devin would be 1,000-yard back. Here's what I will say to this. If the Buffalo Bills go into this offseason and they feel like there are a ton of other things that they need to address, and the Buffalo Bills go out this offseason and add 2 new guards, and they add a swing tackle, and they add a tight end number 2, and they go out in defense and add another defensive tackle and spend some money on a corner and a punter. And by the end of all of this musical chairs and the adding and the filling of holes, the Buffalo Bills don't address the running back position. It's not the end of the world.
Nope.
If a lot of things improve around Devin Singletary will show can be an adequate back. Now, if Devin Singletary gets hurt, you're stuck with Matt Breida. If he gets hurt and you're stuck with Zach Moss, okay, well, now Zach Moss has to meet that potential, and we really haven't seen too many flashes of that. So you're going to want to go out and get another back. And I will say this, even though Devin Singletary would be a completely adequate and serviceable back if we made all those other changes around him, he's still not a factor back in terms of like, you can go out there, like if you see Breece Hall sitting there in the second round of the draft, right? And Breece Hall, like I think Breece Hall can be a Jonathan Taylor type of player in the National Football League. I think he's got that type of potential. If you see that guy sitting there in the second round and you can add him for 4 or 5 years on a rookie deal for no money to your football team, you can add that added explosion. You can add that playmaker. You can add that guy who's actually worthy of taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. That's hard to pass up, right? So while Devin Singletary is an adequate to maybe above average back if everything goes right around him, there are some other backs that the Buffalo Bills have a chance to maybe get this offseason. Melvin Gordon in free agency, I'm looking at too, who we could probably get an affordable deal, who could probably provide more of a spark and more big plays. So again, while if the Buffalo Bills make the decision to fix everything else around him, he's adequate, that doesn't mean that that the Buffalo Bills should just be okay with and not try to improve upon Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I mean, Melvin Gordon is a guy that we've talked about before on this show, and the Broncos are likely to go with Javonte Williams as their lead guy going forward, and they need to figure out anyway what they're going to do with their quarterback situation. But look, Melvin Gordon, 28 years old. He only had a 2-year deal with the Broncos. This is his second of 2 years. So he will be a free agent next year. And I don't know that he's not going to get probably more than another 2-year deal. He signed for 2 years, $16 million with the Broncos. Okay. So if you're the Bills and you make improvements to that offensive line, I'll ask you the question. Would you give Melvin Gordon that same contract if the Bills addressed their offensive line adequately? Would you give Melvin Gordon a 2-year, $16 million contract?
I would probably try to get him in a 1 year, $8 million deal. I would probably try to limit the term on that contract. But I mean, how much is Emmanuel Sanders making this year? $6 million?
Yeah.
$6 million. So, I mean, if you can go out and get Melvin Gordon, you can replace Emmanuel Sanders' paycheck in your offense with a guy like Melvin Gordon, and then Marquez Stevenson steps up and becomes your a guy who you can use like John Brown and sub in and use on the boundary and become your wide receiver number 4 and step in and be a cost controlled asset at wide receiver. You have just traded in Emmanuel Sanders for a receiving running back who's got big play ability, who could take the ball all the way down the field. So to me,
I like the idea of a 1 year. I just wonder if he'd be willing to do that.
And it all depends on the market. I mean, you look at the market for running backs. I mean, Kenyon Drake got 2 years from Oakland on a deal that they're probably going to try to get out of this offseason. James Conner had to sign a 1 year deal in Arizona. Like, being a running back in this league is tough.
It's tough. Yeah.
That's why you're seeing all these receivers in the draft year after year after year, because mama don't raise running backs no more, because running backs don't get paid. Like, it's the money is in being a wide receiver. So, someone up here asked me, like, if in the first round, would you take a running back or an offensive lineman? I have to say it's It all depends on the player, right? Like if Tyler Linderbaum or Ike Ekwonu is sitting on the board when the Buffalo Bills pick, I'm taking Linderbaum or I'm taking Ekwonu. But if it's Zarian Kennard or Zion Johnson, I might consider Breece Hall because I think he might be a better player than those guys. So it all depends on who's on the board. It does depend on the player, but I would obviously lean offensive line, and I would hope for a better offensive lineman being on the board than a running back being on the board when the Buffalo Bills pick on the in the first round. Michael coming in. Thank you, Michael. I respect that. He said, "Judge, your avatar is so much better looking than you." Let's keep that going. Just should I turn the camera on for a second? Just to hi, how you guys doing? I'm just sitting here in my. You see my wife's wedding dress over my left hand, over my right shoulder here.
That's great.
Yeah, we're still in the process of moving, so the camera's going to be like this for a couple more weeks. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting debate that we're going to get into this off season. And we're sure as hell going to have a lot of shows to talk about it.
Feels like this is going to be a same debate we kind of had last year: O-line or running back. Like which, like it's kind of going to be that same discussion.
We addressed neither. So I mean, like,
oh man,
how about some things we didn't like? Let's transition now to things that we didn't like. People in the comment section, let us know, what did you guys not like about this football game? Sheldon Cole comes in right away and says the offensive line. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that for a second. I think that one of the things that obviously was unsettling was the play of the offensive line. Again, just like the game against the Buccaneers, they sort of settled down as time went on. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it's still far below average. Spencer Brown with the unenvious task of having to switch over from right tackle to left tackle, penalties galore. Burns and Reddick were making Josh Allen's life a living hell in that first half. I mean, you can't win a Super Bowl this year with the offensive line playing the way it is. What are your thoughts on the play of this offensive line in this game?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of love going around Spencer Brown today with that picture of him with the beer, but the 5 penalties I wasn't too happy about. Now I know it was a tall order. Like he never should have had to be in that position, but that's the position we're in. A lot of injuries, a lot of issues on that offensive line. We talked about a lot how this offensive line, at least pass blocking, not nearly as good this year as it was last year. And that's been evident the last few weeks, clearly, with the time or lack of time Josh Allen has to get rid of the ball. And we've seen that when he does have time, he can make those plays. Look at the play to Gabriel Davis. Now, I think the Panthers are only rushing 3 guys on that play, but still, you could see early in the game, he was skittish a bit. He had no time, similar to the first half of the Tampa Bay game last week. This offense, like Josh can take this team very, very far on his own, but he does need a little help from his friends, and he needs some protection up front, because I agree with you. For the Bills to really have a legitimate chance to make a deep run, there needs to be some consistency and some elevated play from that offensive line, especially from a pass blocking standpoint. I'm not even going to get into the run blocking at this point, because run blocking, we know, has never really been the strength of this particular unit. But
that's an identity thing. To me, that's more about roster construction than it is about the actual players.
Exactly. But you can get away with a good pass blocking offensive line with the personnel you have and the way the Bills have, quote, built their identity the last 2 years. So that they're going to go as far as this offensive line can keep Josh upright, because he really, he can do a lot, and he can really mask a lot of deficiencies. But man, when it comes to the playoffs, you're going to need some better play from that offensive line up front, especially pass blocking.
You know, I made this comment on Twitter during the game too, especially when you get out to that abysmal start. I really do think that the Buffalo Bills need to rethink who they employ as their offensive line coach come this offseason, because the Buffalo Bills aren't the only team in the National Football League that have offensive linemen that get injured or go on the COVID list. You see a ton of teams that suffer injuries. I'm thinking of the Green Bay Packers and the quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who they go out there and they mask it. Like, they make it work, and it's not embarrassing, and they still put up points. And again, the Buffalo Bills did rebound and did end up putting up 31 points in this game. But I mean, the Green Bay Packers went up and lit up a Baltimore Ravens defense with a bunch of backup offensive linemen. So
Yep.
it can be done. And just the things that I see on a week-to-week basis, like the lack of communication between Darrell Williams and Spencer Brown when they were on the right side in that Tampa Bay game, like to me, that just all goes to coaching. It's not like the talent is terrible on this offensive line. I mean, Darrell Williams, Ike Butker, like that line was fine until the AFC Championship game last year. No one was talking about how shitty the offensive line was. We were just talking about how average they were.
Yep.
And then the same guys are now all of a sudden the most embarrassing things in football. Like, is that all on the players? I'm not saying we don't need new players. I do think we need an all new interior offensive line. I think that you were kidding yourself. I think you were kidding yourself bringing guys like John Feliciano back. But at the end of the day, I think some of it falls at least a little bit on Bobby Johnson. And one thing would like to see is I would like to see maybe people stop ripping on Deion Dawkins so much. I think that he has proven himself to be the left tackle here, and he will be the left tackle here for a long time. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday's case in point why the grass isn't always greener, people. I mean, yes, he's battled COVID twice now this year, and we'll see when he comes back from this latest situation. But really, Deion Dawkins and Mitch Morse, I would say probably are those are the least of your concerns right now for this offensive line. Those two interior guards, and then obviously Spencer Brown looks like he has a bright future ahead at right tackle, and we'll see what happens with Darrell Williams in the future. But it seems like with Deion Dawkins back, you have at least your bookends kind of situated.
I think tackle, center, tackle is fine. Go out this year, sign a guard in free agency. I'm looking at go out and offer Andrew Norwell a big contract, maybe pay him more than he's worth just to get him in here on a contract that you might be able to get out of in a year or two. And then go out and draft two guys. Like that to me, that would be the most. I want at least 3 or 4 new interior offensive linemen in here next off season. I'm completely content with the 2 guys on the edge and the guy at center. But it's definitely the guards that need to be completely restructured this off season.
And it's tough. I get it, because it's really not, flashy or sexy to take a guard in the late 20s in the first round. It's not, right? But like sometimes you almost just kind of, if the right guy's there, you just kind of have to do it. Like Dallas was so successful in doing that a couple years in a row with getting guys like Martin and getting guys like Frederick, right? Like it wasn't like for as crappy as Jerry Jones is as a person, how he's kind of handled that team, they actually did a decent job drafting the last couple years, at least early, and he has to get some credit for that, because it's not easy to do to invest in interior offensive linemen early in the draft, because it's not flashy. So, but maybe that's what you have to do if you're the Bills this year.
I mean, I did a mock draft today on TDN. And obviously it's very, very early in the process, and these things are going to change over time. But, the Buffalo Bills go out in free agency, sign Andrew Norwell, give him $8-9 million a year, give him a big contract. He's your left guard. Right. So now you have Dawkins, you have Norwell, you have Morris, and you have Spencer Brown at right tackle. Go out, re-sign Ryan Bates to be your backup center. Right. Because, he really hasn't embarrassed himself when he's had to play center. And then go out in the draft and, first 2 rounds or 2 of the first 3 rounds, take a guard. First round, take Darian Kennard. Second round, take, Sean Ryan from UCLA. Or first round, take Darian Kennard. Third round, take Donovan West from Arizona State University or Lecketus Smith from Virginia Tech. Go out and take guards in 2 of the first 3 rounds of the draft. All of a sudden, you have a rookie at right guard and a guy like Darian Kennard, and you have a really high upside rookie on your bench behind Andrew Norwell at left guard. It's not difficult. It's not something that the Buffalo Bills need to go to the ends of the earth to address. It's a very simple solution and something that can be fixed in 3 transactions. It's really not hard.
And I like this comment from Nick. How many snaps has Morse messed up? He's still yes, he is. And as much as the Bills are in the shotgun, he's very consistent.
The only knock on Mitch Morse is that because he's 6'6", he doesn't get the leverage on some of these bigger interior defenders, and he can get pushed back, especially in the run game. And that's a serious concern, obviously. But all of his pros outweigh the cons of Mitch Morse. And if you put 2 big fat old guards next to him to protect him, to insulate him, he'll be just fine, right? Like he will be just fine. And I think the fact that he has a really good relationship with Josh Allen as well, I don't think you want to mess with that right now. You don't want to change 3 positions on the interior this offseason. You just want to change 2.
Yeah, and those 2 should, in theory, be the easiest things to streamline into an offensive line if you're trying to retain some kind of continuity, consistency, whatever buzzword you want to use for that. If your tackles are settled and your center is settled, to me, guard, that's the easiest position to kind of rotate as far as like getting new blood in there. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
One of the 2 guards you draft one that has center flex. Like it's like, just draft one that has center flex. That's all you got to do. And Jess comes in and says, "Big old fat guard." That's Cody Ford. I'll tell you what, we've made this comment before. The Cody, and we've seen this time and time again, right? Like I was really excited when the Buffalo Bills drafted Zay Jones because he had pretty strong hands in college. Then he got to the NFL and those hands went away. I really liked Zach Moss because he had really good vision and contact balance in college. And the vision and contact balance just went away when he became a pro. Cody Ford was a guy at Oklahoma who was this fired up, fiery, aggressive, mauling offensive lineman. He got to the NFL and he turns into a little pussycat. Like he's just afraid of any type of physicality. That tenacious, the tenacity, that mean streak, it's gone. It's gone. It disappeared. So, it's you definitely do have to get the scouting right. Like, don't get me wrong, but this is also a staff that drafted Wyatt Teller. They let him go, but they drafted him. So, you got to, and, they drafted Spencer Brown, who I think is going to be a very good right tackle, despite the growing pains this year. It's to be expected. He's a very raw. He came from Northern Iowa. He didn't play at all last season. All the mistakes he's making are to be expected, but you can just tell that dude's going to be good.
Yeah.
And then over at left tackle, Deion Dawkins is good. So that they have somewhat of an ability to find offensive linemen. And I'm, you don't hit on every draft pick. So I'm willing to give the Buffalo Bills a chance to sort of reset the position there, at least on the interior. And there needs to be some veterans in the room. That's why I got Andrew Norwell's name highlighted, Alex Kappa from Tampa Bay. Like there's a couple of guards out there on the free agent market that are going to be highlighted. The Buffalo Bills, they got to go big game hunting at guard this offseason with the money that they do have. And in my opinion, they got to land one of them. They don't need to land Brandon Scherf. He's the big whale, but they got to land one of those mid-tier guys, like an Andrew Norwell or like an Alex Kappa.
And I think we'll look back, regardless of however this season ends, we'll look back and be happy that Spencer Brown got as much playing time as he did this year and really kind of probably establish himself as the right tackle for next year. Because then you have the option, like Darrell Williams signed a 3-year deal. Like you can get out of his contract this year, but you're going to take a $3.5 million dead cap hit. You're more likely to keep him for one more year and then maybe get out of it in 2023. But you still have them some flexibility then with Darrell Williams on your roster. You can put him at right guard. If you go big game hunting and get a Norwell at left guard, that frees you up maybe somewhat in the draft to go after maybe a center guard or like something, right? It gives you some options. It still gives you backups like right tackle. So the Bills will have some options if they can land, like you said, one big name guy in free agency. I think opens up a lot of possibilities for them.
A couple of other things that didn't like to see in this game. Saw a couple people in the comment section mention it before we got into this offensive line talk, was the slow start. Now, the Fox halftime crew, Howie Long, did a really nice job of highlighting the 3 or 4 really bad Josh Allen passes on the first couple of drives. And there was some poor execution on the first couple of drives. But again, whether it's Brian Daboll or whether it's the players, the slow starts are super frustrating. It took the Bills like 3 drives to really just get a grasp of the football game. And against a team that's not the Carolina Panthers, that's going to get you in some serious hot water. And it seemed like the Buffalo Bills found their rhythm when they started to max protect, where they were like, yeah, we're going to keep the tight end in the block. We're going to bring Ryan Bates in. We're going to do some play action stuff. We're not going to worry about sending 5 guys out to try to catch a pass every time we throw the football. We're going to keep the running back in. We're going to keep the tight. It took them like 2 or 3 drives to realize that like maybe chipping is something they needed to do. Yeah. So that was concerning from a coaching standpoint, but also the first couple of drives from an execution standpoint, some of that's on the players as well. What were your thoughts on that slow start?
Yeah, it's a trend now, right? I mean, I I think sometimes the Bills feel like they should be able to exert their will on the team, do whatever, dictate to them, decide what they want to do. And yeah, sometimes that works because you're just the better team, but sometimes you just gotta like really go with the men you've got that day. And it didn't work, right? And I guess I give them, I guess I give them more than one drive to do it. They had negative 10 yards on the first drive or
Mhm.
whatever it was. So, okay, give them 2 drives to do it, and then if that's not working, then switch it up. So, I wasn't overly upset with that. I do think that um you could have avoided that completely had you just gone with a slightly tweaked game plan from the start, but they did get it together, and I think ultimately it worked out, the way they kind of
Mhm.
adjusted. And Spin here says, "Was Allen's foot injury messing with him in the first couple drives? Maybe need to adjust
Could
how
have.
it could have been messing with his mechanics. We saw those balls sail high on him early in the game. Maybe as he got going, it loosened up a little, and he got more comfortable. Obviously, he looked fine on that throw to Davis, that rifle to Davis in the end zone, and some other throws he looked fine. The other throw to Davis actually, where he
Mhm.
threw him up the seam on the left side, going left to right, that was another really nice throw. So that you know there were a couple really nice throws. So I think early on maybe he was favoring him, maybe we don't really know, but
Mhm.
it could have just been a situation where you just got that adrenaline going and it loosened up a bit. Um, and again, the the biggest, obviously, plus was that seemed to be no setbacks,
Mhm.
no ill effects of that afterwards, so that was great.
Yeah.
Leon
Le
says, "Why do you think we don't utilize the short passing game more?"
To me, it was probably Carolina playing a lot of man-to-man defense. They were right up hugging our guys at the line of scrimmage, so it's tougher to get a short passing game going against man-to-man defense than it is zone. But you're right. That is something they got to utilize. So, like, we expected Dawson Knox and Cole Beasley to have a big game. And while they did make some very clutch catches in this game, it's not exactly like they were the centerpiece of the game plan for the Buffalo Bills offense. So maybe trying to work some more stuff to them, Isaiah McKenzie, etc. Like Isaiah McKenzie had the one wildcat play,
Mm.
but I don't really remember too much. I really do think that Isaiah McKenzie can be used offensively, like, and he's just not being right now. Like he was definitely used in this game on some of those jet sweeps, not to actually get the ball in his hands, but to get the defenses moving one way to the other to sort of slow up the pass rush, etc. So the Buffalo Bills did utilize Isaiah McKenzie more in that sense, but he's another guy I think you get involved in the offense. I mean, if there's any guy on your offense that's going to get you some yards after the catch, it's Stephon Diggs, it's Isaiah McKenzie, like
Mm.
it's Dawson Knox, it's not Cole Beasley, it's not Gabriel Davis. Those aren't the yak guys on your offense. So if you're looking for a guy to catch the ball and then make something happen, your boy Lettuce comes in with a good one too. And I've seen a couple people mention this now. Our guy Kyle Naps has talked about it as well. More Diggs slants. Like there's not a lot of slants in this offense. Maybe Kyle Naps from Nat Knows Buffalo Fanatics. He was looking and he was assessing Stephon Diggs's targets chart. He's like, well, not a lot of slants in here. Again, that's missing at least some context. And he mentioned that it was missing that context of, well, that's only targets. He could be running the route and Josh Allen's just not throwing it to him. But Stephon Diggs seems like the perfect candidate to run slant passes and catch the ball over the middle and get some yards after the catch. And it seems like the Buffalo Bills have him mostly running outs to the sidelines, the double moves, going deep, etc., the curl routes. They don't really, it seems like they don't really utilize the slant to Diggs, which is a little weird.
Yeah, they seem to be using his namesake a lot of dig routes where he drives up the field,
Mhm.
breaks toward the sideline or breaks back towards the ball. That's where they seem to use him a lot. And I think, look, those types of routes, again, we talked about this a lot of times on past shows. Like the Bills aren't a big yak team. The routes they are running with Diggs, they're not yak routes, right? He's running outs or dig routes on the edges. Those routes basically are done once he catches the ball, and anything he creates on his own is purely just his own effort, for a couple extra yards.
Mhm.
The slants are those types of routes where, look, there could be yak aplenty, right? If you catch it the
Yeah.
right way. We see this. The Packers have been one of those teams who have done this for years, whether it's Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams now, or whether it was Jordy Nelson, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings in the past. Like that, they made their bread and butter on these slant routes. Now, it's obviously easier said than done, right? Because like if it was so easy to do, they'd be doing it all the time. So there has to be some element here too of like, are the way that defense is playing the Bills, taking that away from them? Are the route concepts the Bills are utilizing with Beasley and Knox in the middle of the field going to create issues with having like too many guys in the same area? Like there's a lot of things that go into that, right? But if you're Brian Dable and you're this creative offensive mind, you should be able to figure out ways to get Diggs in a spot where he can utilize some yak ability, because he does have that ability to create yards after the catch.
And I got to turn my camera on just so my hair is a mess, but just so Go Fins can see the laugh, the smile on my face and the grin on my face with this comment. Go Fins comes in and says, the blueprint to stopping Trash Allen is by playing man-to-man, bump and run, and sending pressures. How has that worked for you, Go Fins? Josh Allen is your daddy, and he says it's past your bedtime, so go to bed, please. Thank you. Have a good one.
And he's actually statistically played better against man-to-man coverage than zone in his career. So
they go from a joke to a team that's like knocking on the door of the playoffs, on a little bit of a win streak, and they get a little full of themselves. Well, Josh is your dad, and he's telling you to go to bed. So go to bed, Go Fins. Anyway, Dan Van K coming in with Josh Allen's lost one game to the Miami Dolphins, and it's because Charles Clay can't catch a fucking pass. Anyway, other things that we didn't like, Tommy Sweeney. Listen, he had that massive drop. I also don't even really think he's that good of a blocker. I think he might be a little overrated in terms of his blocking. The blocking that you saw from him in college is really not translating all too much to the professional level. I think that tight end 2 is an issue. Now, every time I mention this, I get ripped apart from people because it's not enough to guard that I'm talking about. But I really do think that tight end 2 is something that can be upgraded in this offense this offseason. You can be more interchangeable with the tight end number 2. You can you can go between 12 personnel and 11 personnel, rotate between 2 tight ends, rotate between 3 wide receivers, get them back and forth out of base defense and nickel. You can use 12 personnel to improve your running game. You can use 12 personnel to improve your play action and your pass protection on some of these deep shots. There are things you can do. You saw Josh Allen rolling out, which is something we really haven't seen from Josh Allen this season. Play action, rolling out, manufacturing guys open like Tommy Sweeney was when he dropped that pass. There are things you can do when you have these 2 tight end sets that make your offense more versatile. So I think tight end 2 is a big need, because Tommy Sweeney is just pretty much out there just to stand there and block people and chip people. He really provides you no value other than that. And if that's your tight end number 3, fine. He's not embarrassing himself as a tight end number 3, but he's getting exposed as a TE2. And not to mention, if Dawson Knox gets hurt again, he's your TE1. So you want some insurance in case Dawson Knox gets hurt again, because we see the importance of the tight end of this offense. You saw this offense sort of collapse upon itself when Dawson Knox was hurt. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, tight end 2 is a need. And it's, to me, a relatively high need this offseason. And that Tommy Sweeney drop just really highlights that fact, in my opinion.
It does. And I love what you said about getting Josh more rollouts, right? Giving him those levels of options, right, with the tight ends, and giving him the option to run as well. So if we've seen, and it's been proven this year, that tight end is being more of a factor in this offense, and we weren't sure volume-wise would there be a big uptick, but the fact of the matter is Dawson Knox is really the only tight end on the roster that's contributing anything to this offense, where last year maybe you saw a mix of Tyler Kroft and Dawson Knox and even a little Lee Smith last year, right? But it's clear now that Dawson Knox is the guy, and he should be. But so it's not even like, I think we're saying like TE2 is necessarily something you need, because you need to have like this second like amazing receiving threat on the field at the same time. But it's more like of an insurance thing for me for Dawson Knox, and those times where you do run the 12 personnel, it doesn't give away your hand, right? It doesn't tell you like, oh, it's definitely going to this side or it's definitely going to this guy. At least gives you an option, right? So I'm with you. I think tight end 2 is a sneaky need for this team in the offseason.
And Charles comes in and says the Bills play too much 11 personnel for another tight end to be a priority. Maybe they're playing more 11 personnel because their tight end 2 sucks. I mean, so that could be one of the reasons why you don't see more 12 personnel. And we play in Buffalo, New York. Like, we play in cold weather. In some of these games, you're going to want that extra protection. You're going to want those guys closer to the line of scrimmage to help in the run blocking and to set up those play actions and those big body targets when you can't push the ball down the field, etc. So to me, I'm not saying you have to go out. Knox is fine. Knox is great. Knox is awesome. Knox is knocking on the door of elite as a tight end number one.
Mm-hmm.
But you still want a tight end number two. I mean, I look in Oakland, they got Darren Waller, but Foster Moreau doesn't embarrass himself as a tight end number two. Like you can go out in the, Randy Hartman mentions Charlie Kohler, a guy you could probably get, a guy you could probably get in the fourth round of the draft, third round of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
There are a ton of guys you can get in the fourth or fifth round of the draft who could come in here and have more upside than Tommy Sweeney. I'm not saying we need to invest money in like a David Njoku or go out and sign an Evan Ingram. Like, I'm not saying you got to go $10 million at the position. I'm not saying you have to use a day one or a day two draft pick kind of guy, but you can go out there and I think you can find a quality tight end number two that is significantly better than Tommy Sweeney that really won't cost you a lot in terms of monetary or draft asset.
No, I'm totally with you. And so, I mean, I know Randy's been on Kohler, and tight end's going to be another year of kind of like heavy time spent in researching from a draft perspective. So I'm fascinated by what the Bills could maybe do with tight end. Hey, the Panthers had a guy out there, Tommy Trimble, that a lot of people liked last year. So there are guys to be found. We'll see. I think you're right. I think tight end 2 is a sneaky need. And just to be clear, it does not mean that we are disregarding the offensive line. The Bills are going to be signing a lot of different positions and drafting a lot of different positions.
OJ Howard is an interesting name, but I still think his upside is going to get paid. Him and Njoku and Ingram are all going to get paid way more money than they're worth.
Probably.
The last thing I had on my list of things that I didn't like to see was the end of the first half interception from Josh Allen. I mean, that game could have been easily put away a heck of a lot sooner. We could have double dipped. We could have gone 17-0 at halftime and then double dipped at the end of the half. And I know it was nice to see us come back and still kick that field goal. Like that was, I love to see that. You love to see Sean McDermott. Good coaching, right? Like, so the coaches, he did the right thing this week where he didn't just, foil down and take a knee, etc. He just, he was still aggressive, went out, got the 3 points. Then we got the ball back, didn't do much with it, but then Carolina didn't do much with it. And then we finally scored. So it was almost a double dip. It was one away from a double dip, but still the Buffalo Bills were aggressive and they went and got that 9-point lead before the half, but it just didn't have to happen that way. It really did not have to happen that way. It could have been a 17-point lead going into half. Josh Allen's got to, was he trying to feed the ball to Diggs there? Was he aiming for Diggs there? Was that one of those ones where maybe he was trying to force feed the ball to Diggs?
It might have been, yeah. I mean, it was definitely Diggs was the target.
Mm-hmm.
You just hate to see that in that situation because you're on the brink of basically demoralizing this team and putting them away. I had sent something like that on Twitter, like just demoralize them, right? Make it so they don't even want to play, right? And I know they're professionals, whatever, but you go up 21-0 and they have no pulse whatsoever and you get the ball back, like they're done, right? So you gave them life there, and I know they didn't take advantage. They didn't have a kicker, all this stuff, so it's whatever. But against a better team in a more critical situation, you don't want to see things like that happening.
Yeah, Spin 0481 comes in and says, why does McDermott always start a 2-minute drill with a run? That's actually a pretty common thing to run like a draw play because usually when you're running a 2-minute drill, you see the DBs drop back a lot. So you try to pick up like a really big first play by doing the unexpected run and then running up and then quickly running a second play. So it's typically something that people do when running a 2-minute drill to try to get some easy yards. And then oftentimes if it's before the half like that, they'll run the draw play on the first play. And if they get stuffed, then they'll just like kneel it down and end the half. So it's a tactic that some people utilize. It's a philosophy that some people believe in. My guess is the Buffalo Bills feel like everyone's gonna be dropping back. Everyone's gonna expect Josh Allen to chuck the ball down the field. Maybe we can get away with a draw play here and pick up an easy 15 yards or so. So it's just a tactic, I think. I mean, that's definitely not one of the things that rubs me the wrong way. At least when we're running that 2-minute drill, it's not like we're force feeding a running game. Like I was watching the Denver Broncos try to run a 2-minute drill and they were still trying to run the football. It was kind of funny. I'm like, it's like, yeah, they can't pass. They literally can't pass. They're still trying to run the ball, but just they're trying to run it really quickly. So it's not a situation like that. Yeah. And you lost comes in and says, yeah, Jeremy Chin baited Josh Allen 100%. I'm not, it was a great play by Jeremy Chin. And it's not the end of the world that interception happened, but it's just something that you was he maybe, eyeing Stephon Diggs a little too much there, et cetera, et cetera. It's just things that you wonder about. I didn't have a chance to catch Josh Allen's post game. I'm sure somebody asked him about the interception. I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch that. So maybe we can talk about it a little bit more on, Sunday's pregame after I hear some of his comments about it. But it's not the end of the world. But obviously, it's not something that you like to see. And the segment was things that we didn't like about this football game. So, hey. It's always good when we win, and it's always good when there's more things we like than we don't like. To close things out, though, this week, I do have a Jabroni of the week.
Jabroni, you are 3 seconds away, and The Rock means 3 seconds away from The Rock to lay a smackdown on your candy ass.
Yeah, I can't stop you, though. You keep using this word jabroni, and it's awesome.
So I mentioned this on Twitter. I usually don't watch the halftime show. I usually, go to the bathroom, go do some chores, go do the dishes, go to, charge my phone in because I've tweeted so much that my phone is practically dead. Go take my dogs out. There's a million different things that I do during halftime, and it usually doesn't involve watching the halftime show. But I just didn't get off the couch this week during the Fox's halftime show, and I happened to catch whatever the fuck that was. That was the weirdest halftime analysis of a football game that I have ever seen in my entire life. So they start off with Howie Long going on a 2-minute diatribe, just showing replays of all of Josh Allen's incompletions and interceptions. It's like, well, here are the first, here are 3 incompletions from Josh Allen, and here's the interception he threw. What a dog shit quarterback he is. I can't believe, his inaccuracy issues are rearing their ugly head, blah, 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 blah. It looked like a funeral, and we were up by 9 points at the half. Like, I understand it's the Carolina Panthers, but at the end of the day, what disturbs me the most, and then they spent the whole rest of the halftime talking about how inaccurate Josh Allen is and how they can't trust the Buffalo Bills and they can't trust Josh Allen, etc. The whole halftime was just devoted to shitting on the Buffalo Bills.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mentioned this on the show after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. The national media needs to understand that Josh Allen is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the National Football League. He has arrived. He is up there with the Bradys and the Rodgers and the Mahomes of the world.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way in hell Howie Long or Terry Bradshaw or Jimmy Johnson would have conducted that halftime show if it was the Kansas City Chiefs who had just had that half against the Carolina Panthers, or if it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who had just had that half against the Carolina Panthers, or if it was the Green Bay Packers who just had that half against the Carolina Panthers, because Tom Brady's had those halves. Aaron Rodgers has had those halves. Patrick Mahomes has had those halves. And what do the national media people do during half times? Oh, Tom Brady just needs to do what Tom Brady needs to do in the second half. Oh, Aaron Rodgers needs to be Aaron Rodgers in the second half. Patrick Mahomes needs to be Patrick Mahomes in the second half. Or, not the greatest half in the world for Patrick Mahomes, but he'll do better. They wouldn't dare talk about those 3 guys the way that they talked about Josh Allen at halftime. It was just so weird, and it was so unnecessary, and it added no value or context to the game or the national narrative. Like, it was so weird, and it was just so, like, infuriating. I really wish I would have taken a dump, because it would have been a better use of my time.
Bills are up 17 at the half, and you see they use the graphic of like the rotating circle underneath him, as if like that we didn't know where he was on the field, like throwing the incomplete passes, and they show like the shot tracer like on the ball or whatever it is, and I'm like. And then Howie Long when they stopped showing the replays, he's like, oh, but then he like did come back and like make some good throws like later on, but like they don't show any of those.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I made this comment too before Spin on Twitter, and I got like some heat for it because people are like, oh, it was a different era. The completion percentages back then weren't as high. The dude's like a 50.
I missed this comment from Jonathan. I actually thought Jonathan Vilma and that crew, I don't know who his play-by-play guy was.
It was I actually like Kenny Albert.
They didn't.
I do like Kenny Albert.
But I missed Jonathan Vilma saying Josh Allen is tough, but not that tough. Okay,
I missed that too.
I missed that one. It's just so frustrating to watch. Like, and I understand that, like, I understand that we're supposed to not take it at face value, and we're supposed to understand that it's an entertainment thing, blah, blah, blah. And like, we got to be bigger people, and we got to stop having such an inferiority complex. But there are other people that are watching that halftime show who aren't Bills fans, who are just part of the national conversation, part of the, they're just fans of football. And they see Howie Long, and they see Jimmy Johnson, they see Terry Bradshaw, and they see the fact that they are paid to be on television, and they take those words as facts.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just continues to spin the narrative around Josh Allen. It's just so effing frustrating. Like, come on, all of these networks, ESPN, Fox, NBC, they pay these guys so much money, so much, millions and millions and millions of dollars to just fucking talk out of their assholes. All they have to do is just pay some random guy on the internet like us minimum wage to go out there and talk. And the same number of people are still going to watch it. People aren't watching the halftime show for Howie Long, Jimmy Johnson, and Terry Bradshaw. They're watching it because it's just the only thing on between the football games. So I don't understand the need to pay these dudes millions and millions of dollars to go out there and do something when you could literally put a trained monkey out there and people are going to watch it.
I mean, Terry Bradshaw gets paid like $5 million a year to be up there and say the things he does. I mean, can you imagine getting paid $5 million a year to say the things he does just because he played quarterback in the 70s? I mean, like, man, what a gig. What a gig. I mean, I mean, good for him because he's made the most of it, but man, what a gig.
And your boy Lettuce comes in. I mean, this is spot on. I mean, this is it. The national media built a narrative around Allen in 2018, and heck, if they admit they were wrong, it's all these people, right? Like you see on Fox Sports, Chris Broussard is paid to talk about the NFL, even though he has no idea. He has no idea what he's watching when he watches a football game. He thinks that Taylor Lewan plays for the Buffalo Bills. Like, he's literally, someone's just saying things in his earpiece, and there's something on the monitor. The man's probably never watched a football game in his life, yet he sits there and prognosticates about it because they have to be versatile, and they have to put these guys, because they pay him so much money, on all these different channels. Same thing goes for, like, they put all these guys who aren't draft guys like on the draft. So all of these guys have prognosticated about the draft, and all these guys shit all over Josh Allen during the pre-draft process. And now that they shit all over him during the pre-draft process, they're like, well, we can't walk it back. Like, maybe eventually he'll hit the wall. Like, maybe eventually, like, he'll Carson Wentz himself, and then we can all pat ourselves on the back for being right. But joke's on you guys, because he ain't gonna Carson Wentz himself.
Yeah, I mean, and you really can't do that now that he's had like 2 MVP caliber seasons like in a row. Like, I mean, like he's not Ryan Leaf here, people. Like, I mean, like
he's not Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, like, come on.
Super frustrating. Do you have any jabronis of the week?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. I think we'll just stick with that. I like it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we always appreciate you guys here on the Air Raid Hour. Catch us this Sunday, 11:45, right? Did I get that time right? 11:45 before the Bills and the Patriots. Hopefully we will be assessing a full roster for at least the Bills. And hopefully the game will still be played on Sunday, but we already saw the early COVID results coming in for some of the Bills players like AJ Epinesa. So who knows what we will be analyzing, but we will be analyzing it Sunday morning starting 11:45 right here on the Cover One Sports Network. We were having some brief discussions before this morning as well, about when we're going to start going back to the 2 days a week. And we'll probably be doing that, probably going back to the Monday, Thursdays, right around the Senior Bowl, to start our offseason. Dude,
we are doing 2 days a week.
Yeah,
now, but one's just a pregame show. So we will be doing our Monday, Thursdays in the off season, really getting into the draft and free agency, our bread and butter.
It's not healthy how many hours I've spent analyzing the Senior Bowl and East West Shrine Game rosters this afternoon. I made a spreadsheet. Like, I got a problem.
And we got John.
Yeah, John. Here. Merry Christmas. Thank you for many excellent shows. Thank you, John. We always appreciate when you chime in with that Harvard education. Can't go wrong. Nice. Can't go wrong commenting and prognosticating about comments from a man with a Harvard education.
Yep. And I see we've got James Emming saying thank you all, first time checking you out. We appreciate that, James, very much. And we have a couple people saying Dave, glad they found us over here on cover one. Weren't sure where we went.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out a better way to get the word out that we've kind of moved.
Nah.
We've kind of announced it on social media and stuff, but for the folks who only watch on YouTube, it's kind of difficult to get that information out. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll
Hey,
we'll
listen,
figure out a way.
if you guys enjoy the show that we're putting on here, as always, smash the like button. But there's a share button as well. So if you know any other Bills fans, family members, etc., people who would enjoy the show, let them know about it and let them come join the party here on Monday nights here at the Air Raid Hour.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Leon. He says, I will share your show. Thank you, Leon. We always appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, that will just about do it. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.